What up, Stackers? BigstackMcgee here. How are you doing today? It is Friday night, February 28th, and I am doing a video based on viewer request on for someone like me that makes regular silver and gold purchases, how much of my portfolio, my assets, winds up being in precious metals. And I'm going to do an overall look at my asset allocation. And then further in the video, I'm actually going to look at the precious metal stack and talk about how much of everything I have that compromises my stack. One disclaimer before we get too into this, I got some pie charts I'm going to pull up here in just a second. I'm not saying that this is what you should do to allocate your assets. I'm just simply saying this is how it shakes out for me. And I've kind of given some not specific answers in the past, mostly because I didn't have specific percentages to go on until I actually sat down this week, updated all of my values, and looked at. I have a spreadsheet that I have everything on that points to where everything is, and lets my family know what accounts and things like that, and it also updates. So I do have a spreadsheet for my precious metals that all I have to do is simply update silver spot price, gold spot price, and platinum spot price, and it goes through the entire inventory that I have and updates all the prices. And we'll again talk about that a little bit later, but right now let's pull up the overall asset allocation chart for me. And I have several different categories on here. The first thing you're going to see, the biggest asset class that I have here is property value. And as if you've been watching my videos in the last few months, you know that I've recently been able to pay off my house, which has just been a fantastic feeling. And so based on the property value on Zillow as of right now, and we know that that's not always entirely accurate, but that compromises 36.6% of all of my assets. So it's the biggest chunk of the pie here. And then close to that is going to be, in red here, retirement accounts. And that's everything from the retirement that I have through my employer. I do get a match on my investments, and I match out the max that's offered to me every month. My wife does as well. We both have Roth IRAs. I also have an old traditional IRA from a previous time of my life, and it's sitting in an account that I can't really modify until after I change employers, if I do indeed change employers. So basically 5 retirement accounts compromise the 33.9% of my assets at the moment, and that's based on value as of this week. Well, and of course I need to qualify that in the height of this coronavirus correction phase of the markets, I'm sure that that's actually a bit lower now because of the correction, because most of that is in the stock market in some way, shape, or form. Let's see here. What's next? Next highest is precious metals. 11.5% of my assets are currently in precious metals. I am going to qualify that by saying that this is not entirely accurate in terms of the value of all of them, simply because every single piece that I have is put into my spreadsheet based upon melt value. Now, some of the pieces I have do carry a premium. They were either purchased with a premium or they traditionally have a premium. An example would be American Silver Eagles. You know, I have a bunch of those, and they're sitting on my spreadsheet valued at whatever the spot price of silver is at any given day. I don't factor in any kind of premium, even though when you go to sell them, you might be able to get 50 cents more or $1 more, depending upon where you send them and who you sell them to. There's other pieces too, like especially some foreign government bullion and things like that, stuff from Perth that you probably will be able to get some sort of premium return, although I'm not counting on it, and I don't consider that when I value my stack. So 11.5% of my stack, of my assets, are in precious metals at the moment. And I think that's a pretty good amount. You know, I've always kind of had heard 10% is a good percentage to have. Especially, I think for people that are well-rounded and they have assets in lots of different places, 10% is a pretty historic amount that I've heard, at least, that it's okay to to have that much in silver and gold, etc. And so it's a little bit more, but not too much more. So some people, I think, have thought that that's my primary source of assets is precious metals based upon how much that I've been picking up over the last 6 or 7 years. But all right, moving on. We'll come back to that as I take a closer look of the actual stack. All right, next up in terms of value is going to be 529 college accounts. So we've had some sort of 529 account ever since my oldest child was born almost 16 years ago. And I got 3 kids, and we have an account for each one of them, and we've been contributing every month since they were born. Not as much as we, back in the day. We've increased the amounts many times as we've been able to. But right now, in terms of my total assets, we got a good chunk of change sitting in a 529 college account. I did pull that money. I've had that in an S&P 500 index fund for years and years and years. Probably, I don't know, 14 years, 15 years. I used to have it on some kind of custom, like aggressive, because they were little babies. But then I just, based on something that I had heard from Warren Buffett about how, any other fund, trying to beat the S&P over time, most fail. So I just I'll move it all in the S&P, and it did quite well, especially for my oldest, who there's far more in earnings than we ever put in. So it's more than 100% of return, which is great. But that money I had pulled out of that S&P index fund close to the end of the year. I'm pretty grateful I did, because I was thinking we're getting close. I don't trust the markets right now at all, especially with what's the craziness that's been happening with the almost 10% correction over the last several days. But so that money is just sitting in a guaranteed investment. I think it's like a 2 to 3% guaranteed, because my kids are going to need that pretty soon. So we're nearing the time where that money needs to become liquid. So, 9% of my assets are in college funds to help pay for my kids to go to college. Incidentally, my plan is not to just pay 100% of my kids' way. My plan is to provide 50%, and they're going to come up with the other 50% either through work, scholarships, or some sort of loan that they will pay back, even if that loan comes from me. We'll keep a log and that kind of thing, because that's what my parents did for me, and it did teach me that I wanted to have as little debt as possible, because I hated that hanging over my head. But that's my plan. I'm not planning on just paying 100% of my kids' college, and I don't even know if they're going to go to college or if they're going to go to some sort of trade school. They're young enough where they've not made any kind of decisions and things like that. But that money is available, and I'm glad it's there. All right, moving on. Cash. It says cash. It's liquid assets. That's either actual cash, savings account, checking account, things like that. Right now, currently, 4% of my total assets are liquid in the form of some sort of cash that I have access to. Vehicles, 3.5%. Okay, my wife and I both have a car. That does not count a motorcycle or a scooter that I have, but it does count the 2 vehicles, both of which are relatively new within the last 3 to 4 years. We've gotten those vehicles, very, very trustworthy. My previous car I drove for 17 years. And recently had picked up another one a couple years ago, and I'll probably drive that as long as I can as well. So very little of my assets are in vehicles. And then finally, the smallest little sliver there, HSA account. I do max out an HSA. I think this year I was able to put $6,000 of pre-tax money in an HSA, and it's grown because we don't use all of that towards we have deductibles and whatnot. I have a pretty high deductible for my health insurance, and I think once my family gets past, I'm trying to think, is it $5,000 or $6,000 in a year, then insurance will kick in after that. But I'm able to put pre-tax money in and use that to help pay for those anything that's in the deductible. And over time, since we don't always meet the deductible every year, so that money grows. And so that's sitting in an account. So 1% of my assets are in some sort of health savings account. So there you have it. Only 11.5% of my total assets are in precious metals. I am curious if you, if you happen to know your numbers. I would love for you to comment on where you're at. Do you know, for those of you that stack precious metals, how much of your assets are in precious metals? I would love to leave a comment. And of course, if you see some kind of issue with the way that my assets are allocated, let me have it. I'm always open to opinions, and I'm curious what you guys think. I do not have any debt, so this is 100% like I have a credit card I use every month. Most of my bills are put on the credit card, and I get cash back, and then I just pay that in full from cash reserves every month. So, and of course income and things like that. So that's it for my asset allocations. Let's move on now to I'm going to pull up another pie chart of my stack, and here's how it shakes out. 53.9% of my stack is in silver, 40.8% is in gold, 4.3% is in some sort of graded vintage coin, and 1% is in platinum. So let's start with the top, that silver one. Like I said, 53.9%, the majority of my stack is in silver. But let's take a closer look at how this all looks. I actually am going to break that silver down into the kinds of silver. So let me put up a slightly different chart here. All right. So of all of the silver that I have, 18.5% of my silver stack is in the form of generic silver bars, and 13.5% is in some sort of 90% silver. That's 1964 or before, half dollars, quarters, silver dollars, dimes, war nickels. If I have a couple of those. Actually, I don't even think my war nickels are written anywhere in my stack, but I've got a tube of them somewhere. 11% American Silver Eagles, 7% foreign government coins, stuff like from Perth or from Mexico, or anything that's from a foreign government. 3.9% is in generic rounds, and that has been going up as I've been purchasing more generic rounds. Not nearly as much as I have for generic silver bars, but I am going to be getting more generic rounds as we go. Let's go to the other part here. Gold, 40.8%. I envision probably my gold stack will at some point overtake my silver stack because I'm not buying as much silver as I have in the past. Of course, it depends on where I perceive the value to be and what deals I can pick up. I love picking up stuff as close to spot as possible. In fact, I made a purchase today as the precious metals market pulled way back on today. Don't know why. I really don't care. But it was enough that I was able to find a dip in the middle of the afternoon and pick up something, order something, and then of course the prices started coming back a little bit, and so that was actually rarely have I timed to purchase good during a day, but it worked out fine today. But so yeah, 40% in gold. Let's talk about the 4.3% in graded vintage coins. That's a little bit misleading simply because I do have a trade dollar that I purchased. I do have a Seated Liberty dollar that I recently purchased. I have a nice graded Morgan silver dollar from the CC mint mark. I also have a graded peace dollar, which is not any kind of grade piece, but that's basically the silver graded coins that I have. I have one more. I do have a $20 St. Gaudens gold double eagle, and that is graded. I was able to pick it up for spot price back in the day in the 1100s or 1200s, which it seems great now, and they sent an MS63 coin, so that's kind of nice. That's included in the graded vintage coin simply because it's encapsulated and graded, so I don't count that as part of my gold stack here simply because it's slabbed. But so that raises that part up quite a bit. So there you have it. That's where my stack shakes out. How do I see this changing in the future? Like I said, more gold. I've been searching and seeking out more gold. I'm going to have more generic rounds because that's what I can pick up easily from my local coin store. I can always count on them having that. I'll still pick up American Silver Eagles if I can find them and silver is at the right price and I can find them for $2 or less premium. Then I love to get American Silver Eagles over getting generic. I'm not going to probably pick up a whole lot more foreign government coins. I haven't in the last several years, so I don't see that changing anytime soon. I'll be getting more silver bars. I love bars. I had, I love that you can touch them and hold them and all that kind of stuff, and the character they have, especially the older ones. But 90%, I'll be getting more of that as well as I finish out my guardhouse collection. I need more quarters and dimes. I'll be getting some of that stuff. But that's it. So I'm going to keep things pretty much the same as I have been. But this has been very instructive for me as I look at everything that I have. And it's really interesting. My wife, she laughed at me when she saw the pie charts because, she's one of those that, I'm like, all right, take a look at how we're, it's just like, all right, I see you put some effort into this. And how long is this going to be? This conversation of pointing everything out. But she did appreciate seeing how everything shakes out. And it was also interesting to know that she thought that more of our assets were in precious metals than it actually is. So there you have it. Sorry for the super long video, but I feel like I just needed to kind of explain through where everything's at. Like I said, I'd love to hear some comments. If you have anything to say regarding either how all my assets are allocated or what the stack looks like, I'd love to know. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. This is BigstackMcgee. We'll be back at you real soon. Take care.